Good morning. It is Tuesday morning. It's definitely time for a transformation. Hey, we're going to go over something here that is very specific for a certain type of people that keep coming into my life. So I figure there's got to be a reason why this keeps coming into my life and why these people continually add suffering and displeasure to their life. And so I want to talk about it today. And why are some people perfectionists? You know, it's funny because people will say, I am a perfectionist. They say it, I'm a perfectionist, and perfectionism becomes an identity of who they believe they are and not what they do. But then the ironic thing is in the very next sentence, a person will say, hey, I'm a perfectionist. But then they say, well, I know I really shouldn't be, and it causes me a bunch of stress. And they know, in fact, it causes problems for other people in my life, but I can't help it, right? And so they think it's an identity, and being a perfectionist can lead to many successes. Hey, people that are perfectionists, they can do great things. But it's not the outcome that becomes the problem. It's the process that becomes a problem. And when you set your standard for perfection, because it's not just a standard, you're actually trying to meet an emotional need. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because you have some great successes, but what you end up with is many more failures because of your perception of perfection. And it not only obviously affects your life, then everybody knows it affects the lives of just about everybody that's involved with you or in you if they interact with you. So where does perfectionism come from? Again, it's not a condition, it's an emotional need. And what it comes from is the need to meet certainty and control. Why? Because certainty and control actually represents safety. It represents that safety of survival, that I'm not being threatened, I'm not vulnerable to hurt, and that actually gives people power. Safety gives people power when they feel like they're in control. The problem is, we all know that you can't be in control of everything. And you certainly can't be in control of every little step of the process, because the problem with perfectionism isn't the outcome, it's controlling and trying to control every step of the process. And so where does a person feel that need for certainty? Because it's not the need for a condition, it's an emotional need. And the primary, number one, lowest emotional need that all humans have is certainty. Because certainty represents safety, it represents survival. So a person that says, I'm a perfectionist, if you look back in their history when they're before 7 years old, something happened in their life where they felt totally out of control and powerless to a situation. And so the difference is with kids, we know we are innately dependent on our parents. Can a 5-year-old kid go out in the street and out in the world and take care of themselves? Probably not. Can a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old go out in the world and take care of themselves? No. So we know that we can't take care of ourselves and we are totally dependent on our parents. And so when situations happen in our family and we feel a threat to that family unit, then children automatically see everything as I'm not going to survive. So what are these conditions, some of the conditions, and I see patterns in human behavior that lead to this? Well, you see parents that are fighting all the time. Parents that fight, children witness it, they don't like stress, children just want to be loved, they see it as a possible separation, and now the parents, whether they split or not, that fighting represents the possibility that I'm not going to survive. Divorce at a young age, because the parents separate. It's not, even if they have two loving parents, sometimes it's just the separation. Now the family unit is broken. And during that initial process, they get wired for, oh my God, what's happening? Everything's breaking up. What am I going to do? Even if they have loving parents, it's based on the perception of the child. Any type of abandonment. What's really sad is that all the time I hear stories that the mom or dad just left for work, or they left in the morning and they never came back. kids that never saw that parent again, or maybe decades pass or years pass before they even see that parent. So one day the parent is just gone. And I mean, most of us don't understand that, but the reality is it's a lot more common than we think. How about the death of a parent? So when I look at my son Chase, when I came into his life when he was 6, his dad, that was kind of in and out of his life anyways, poof, gone. He didn't see him again. And then at 11, his mom died. So talk about the perception of abandonment. Yet, fortunately, I was there to guide him through all this spiritually, and he's a very healthy child. So death of a parent, that's obvious. A parent that just leaves, that's obvious. Divorce. But what we don't think about are the stresses that are caused because parents create unnecessary problems with each other. Here's one that we don't even think of because we think we're doing a good job. A parent, or when your parents or a child receives love or tons of acknowledgement for good accomplishments. Now we think, wow, my kid did something good. I need to reward him. But we're training them. Look at 5 love languages. 5 love languages are learned. What's one of them? Acts of service, words of affirmation, maybe touch. And so when you bring all these together, then a child feels and they begin to learn that even though this isn't your intention, your perception and their perception becomes, I get love when I do good things. So if they don't get those acknowledgments, then they feel like they're not loved. And all of a sudden they're out of control. Then they have to do things. Now, what if they do things and they don't get acknowledgement? And then everything becomes all screwed up, and now they try and control everything because love becomes about what they do, acts of service, about what they do and not who they are. And then all of a sudden, we become adults, and then we have fear that if we don't act a certain way or we don't control certain things, that we're not going to be loved, that we're not going to meet our need for certainty, and now this becomes a problem. Why? Because then our whole life becomes based on fear of vulnerability. And the people that call themselves perfectionists, they feel this deep within their spirit all the time. And then the problem is those people may not be happy in general. They may have happy moments, but inside, if they have to control everything and everything isn't the way they want it to be, then they're stressed. And this isn't any surprise. So what's really going on? So how do we move from perfection and from having moments of happiness into into an internal state of joy? Well, one of our highest human needs, we have 6 human needs, and this is from Tony Robbins. Our 5th human need, the highest is contribution, the one right under there is growth. We have a human need for growth. Perfection and certainty it's the lowest human need, but there is no spiritual need for certainty. Growth is actually a human need. In fact, we always have to be growing. Growing is nonstop. Why? Because we are spirit first. We are divinity living in a human body, having a human experience, and spirit is life force energy. Life force energy is very creative. It never stops. It's like a fire hose that you can't shut off. Imagine holding a fire hose that you can't shut off. You better be careful where you point it because it's going to flood something. So you better point it in a direction like in a sewer or somewhere where that water can drain off. You are life force energy. Growth is constant. Life force is constant motion. It never stops. We are eternal, and we come into this body to express our purpose and manifest, and that life force energy is constant. So you're either growing in positivity, you're growing in health, you're growing mentally, you're growing emotionally, or you're growing spiritually in a positive way. And if you're not growing in a positive way, then you're growing in disease, your mentality is degrading, you're emotionally degrading, and spiritually, well, we are eternal, we are love, but if you're not conscious of that, then spiritually you're degrading, and that leads to disease and death. How do we know this? Because look at people that bust their ass their whole life, then they retire, they're not growing anymore, and what do? They get sick and die. Have you ever heard of that? People retire and then they die. I look at my own father, who was very young, mentally very sharp, physically active. Then COVID hit. He got all stressed about COVID. He didn't want to go inside. I saw him the first time 2 weeks ago in a year and a half, and he looked easily 10 to 15 years younger than his age 2 years ago, and I saw him 2 weeks ago, and now he looks like an old man. Why? Because he stayed in his house, he stopped growing, and now I didn't say anything, but now he looks like a 90-year-old man. Before he was 89 or 88, he looked like he was maybe 73 or 74. And now he looks like a 90-year-old man. He looks like an old man. Why? He stopped growing. And that is what we're called to do. So since we can't control every step, since perfectionism sets us up for failure, perfectionism is not as important as progress. Progress is the opportunity to continually grow in a positive way. What's progress mean? Progress means we don't have to control every step. Because if we just focus on progression, then every step we take a positive step. Every step that we take, every progressive step, we can celebrate. Now we go from moments of happiness and moments of stress into moments of joy, because every day is progress. Every day that we do something positive, even if it's smile at someone, it's progress. Every step is successful. So we're not looking for happiness. We're seeking joy. And joy comes from progress, not perfection. So if we can get perfection out of there, because there's nothing we can really control, right? Control is an illusion. Perfection is an illusion. Perfection is a perception. Progress is a core value. Progress is who we are. Progress is our divinity living in humanity. Now, here's really a principle that when you get this, and I'm just going to finish up here, when you get this, your whole life will change. Get this. We have no flaws. We just have flawed perceptions of ourselves. We are divinity living in humanity. We're created in likeness and image of God. We don't have any flaws. The only flaws we have are the perceptions of ourselves. So here's some biblical quotes that I believe relate to how do you deal with perfectionism. Romans 8:38. Nothing can ever separate us from God's love. Neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. Man, when you know that and you feel that in your body, hey Letitia, hey from New Zealand, when you feel that in your body, you can never be separated from God's love. Then you don't have to stress about abandonment. Then you don't have to stress about control. I was with a friend just chatting the other day, and something happened in her life, and it was with a man in her life, and something happened. She didn't really like it. And I'm like, well, what are you getting stressed about? Because I don't really see the problem with that. And she goes, well, that's the way I react when I feel abandoned. And then all of a sudden she went, oh my God. All of a sudden, well, of course, because she's with me and this is what we're talking about, the whole light went on like, oh my God, I have a trigger for abandonment. Now, what was her story? Her dad left the family when she was a young child for another woman. Boom. Immediately, there's a pattern. There's a pattern. So, things have happened, but they are not who you are. Things may have happened in your life because other people are not functioning at their highest consciousness, but that is not who you are. So nothing can separate you from God's love. That's what you're connected to. I used to tell my son, hey, I'm your earthly father, but God is your father. I will surely make mistakes, and you better get a second job, because by the time you're 30, you might need a little bit of counseling. But know that God is the perfect father. I am a human father, and I'm doing the best that I can with what I know right now. So Psalms 56:3. When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you. What's that mean? When you try and control, that's fear-based. Then we can catch ourselves in the moment and say, I put my trust in God. The only perfect process is the perfect will of God, which leads us to Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of the world. It doesn't matter if your father left you when you were young, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's it. Renew your mind. When you feel fear, that you put your trust in God. When you feel fear, you know it's something from your past. When you feel fear, it's not a flaw in you, but a flawed perception of you, because you're created in the likeness and image of God. You have no flaws. There are only flawed perceptions. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, the good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. So how do you attain perfectionism? Follow the will of God. And the will of God is not necessarily in the conditions. Seek the kingdom first, and all else will be added, right? Go inside for the perfect will of God, and then express that on the outside. So our life conditions are things that may have happened. They may have happened because other people didn't know the perfect will of God for them. But it's not who you are. It's just a response to a fear-based emotion. So what's the bottom line? Hey, we can let that go. Is it time you decided to live who you are truly created to be? And if that answer is yes, we can let go of perfection. We can gain progress. We can be more attached to progress, loving every step in the present moment. We can forget about happiness, and we can have an internal state of joy. And if you need any help with that, to really get beyond and let go of those things and truly experience who God created you to be, go to youaremorepowerful.com. Okay, you guys. Hey, I love you. Let's release control and let's do everything out of love. We love progress, and I love you. Thank you. Have an awesome day.